Who's ready to win the day in sports? I know you are. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com, Monday through Friday, noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm Justin Fensterman, and let's break everything down from a fantasy sports perspective. What is going on, everybody? My name is Justin Fensterman. Good afternoon. If you're on the east side of town, if you're anywhere else, good morning to all of you. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily here on the Elite Plus Network, powered by the good old FG FantasyGuru.com. Every single Wednesday, you know I hang with you at noon Eastern. Ray Flowers takes on the rest of the days, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Ray will actually be on with Jeff Mans on the Elite Sports Show, 3 p.m. Eastern. You could hear Jeff all week long on Fantasy Sports Radio at 3 p.m. Eastern, talking all things football. Ray gets into the baseball. And then generally, you get both myself and Ray Flowers on the Elite Sports Game Time Show, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on Fantasy Sports Radio. But this week, we're actually filling in the morning, so we're on 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern. More in preview form and talking about a lot of fantasy football draft targets. A good, fun show coming up for you because I know some of you are going to be a little bit disappointed, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But must tell you here, even though the NBA season has concluded, and on Wednesdays I generally do a lot of basketball in season, but once we're out of season, I try to then steer away, except that there are major storylines here. And boy, have there been a lot of storylines going on in the NBA impacting the futures market. I'm going to talk about a few of you in Discord are asking me. By the way, in our Discord at fantasyguru.com, I'm at Fensty, Fensty. On X and Instagram, I'm Fensty Sports, at Fensty Sports, Fensty Sports. And people spell it wrong, so I often spell it out now. So that way everybody can get a hold of me. And a lot of you are asking, well, Fensty, I'm rooting for X team. I'm rooting for the Rockets. I'm rooting for the Suns. What does this mean for the future of the NBA? I will talk about all of that. We got the draft coming up tomorrow. And then what I'm going to do this week is generally every single Thursday, I put out a new Fensty's Basketball Diaries NBA podcast, which is our NBA podcast for the site. And every week I talk for about between 30 and 40 minutes, different topics, different teams. I talk a lot of futures in the summer. And for those that were riding with me in the summer during the off-season months, still on the podcast, we talked about futures like the Rockets win total, the Cavs win total, both of them going over. I talked about who I thought was going to win the NBA championship the following year. So it's still business as usual, even though we are technically in the off season. But at fantasyguru.com, there simply is no off season. And that's where we come in. Now, Rich Maletto, the Fantasy Bosco, is going to stop by in a little bit and talk some running backs with me and some of his favorite running back units that he likes the best here. And I'm going to go over some draft strategies. What I've been doing is I've been taking different questions and turning them into topics from what you've been bringing up at Discord. So I'll go over a few of them today. But let's start things off by talking about what is going on in the NBA, because there are a lot of major trades. And these aren't just minor names. These are pretty big second options, top options, third options. These are top three guys on teams that are getting dealt right now. And we saw before Game 7 of the NBA Finals, congrats to the Oklahoma City Thunder and all the faithful that roots them on, we saw Kevin Durant get traded to the Houston Rockets. And this was something that has been in the works for a long time. The Houston Rockets need the offense. They proved against the Warriors that they just didn't have enough consistency in that offense. And now they get Kevin Durant. And Kevin Durant is going to be needed to score. This isn't going to be a situation where half the time Kevin Durant is in pass mode, half the time he's in scoring mode. They need Kevin Durant in scoring mode at all times. So while a building team, I don't love Kevin Durant long-term, for a team like the Rockets that have been building and have been finishing in the top three in the West, they're set to add a piece that's good for a team with a small window right now. And I'm not saying necessarily long-term the Rockets have a small window. They've got a lot of young talent on their team. And they had a plethora of guards, which is where Jalen Green comes in. Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, they're going to be going back Phoenix's way. And Jalen Green, while we saw his defense improve, his offense was very inconsistent. The guy at times could barely hit 40% from the field. He took a lot of shots, and kind of like what I was talking about with Tyrese Halliburton, once he isn't hitting his shots, he doesn't keep forcing it. He just starts passing off and makes the other players around him better. Jalen Green is not that person, at least as of right now. He can grow into that player. He's going to shoot and shoot and shoot. Now, he'll help out a little bit more and not just stay outside the arc. He'll fight for rebounds, which will be good for Phoenix, but Phoenix isn't done. A lot of these teams are just getting going here. Teams that made moves, they're not done just yet. Phoenix is going to do everything they can to distance themselves from Bradley Beal, as they should, because Bradley Beal is not a winning piece to an NBA franchise. To me, he plays decent enough defense still. He's a 16 to 18 point scorer, and that's about it. When his shot is off, he might as well not be on the court. Might as well be Casper the Ghost, because he doesn't make an impact in reality. And that's where I come in, by the way, when it comes to all of this. We all can look up the numbers. We all can look up the trends. But watching these games, that's where I come in, because I get a lot of exposure to every single team throughout the season. I kind of keep a running list of what team I'm watching when. That way I can focus on other teams. And I go back to my notes and read about those notes. It really helps you understand the game more, not only in basketball, but any sport. The more footage and the more game action, not just highlights, but the more game action that you're watching. So Kevin Durant goes to Houston. I think the fit is fantastic for this team. I do. I don't think it messes with chemistry necessarily. I think that there's enough room for him. I'm wondering what else Houston is going to try to do. Now that guard spot isn't as much of a logjam, I'm interested to see what comes of guys like Reed Shepherd. Fred VanVleet, they'll keep kicking the tires on him, but at the same time, we saw Fred VanVleet go cold. The difference between Fred VanVleet this past year versus other years is he would keep shooting like Jalen Green. Now he's more of a passer when he's not firing, and that's more often than not. And that's why I think them getting Kevin Durant was a very good piece. Other teams that I thought were going to be in on Kevin Durant, I thought the Miami Heat could have put up a good package for Kevin Durant, but the Heat had to make a decision with what they had right now on their team. Could they actually win an NBA championship? And it seemed that Pat Riley didn't think so. And that's why you don't go all in on a Kevin Durant if you don't think you're an immediate contender. Houston, an immediate contender. I mean, look at the title odds. They're at plus 750. They're second. I'm not saying go slam them just like that. But because of what we've seen with some of these other teams, beyond the Thunder, there's no clear-cut second team at this point that I can think about. Because if you asked me about 3 days ago, hey, Fensty, besides the Thunder potentially repeating, who do you think could win the NBA championship next year? The Boston Celtics weren't necessarily one of those teams, because they go to me where Jason Tatum goes. And if Jason Tatum's not out there, they're not winning. So to me, he's going to be out most, if not the entire season. But Boston made the moves that they did. They traded Jrue Holiday to Portland, which is just hilarious because Holiday originally got traded to Portland in the Damian Lillard deal. And then they sent him right away, which I thought back then, I thought that was nice. That's a nice little piece for them. And then they sent him back east, and I was just wondering, okay, they didn't want to really pay him. Well, now Jrue Holiday is making about $100 million combined over the next few years. And that's not Boston's problem anymore, because what Boston did was they traded Holiday, fine defensive weapon. On the offensive side, didn't come through as much. Boston was a little bit banged up as a whole. Last year, we saw that. It didn't completely tear them down, which was great. But here's the problem. Jason Tatum this year is going to be pretty much a lost year, because when you're a team like Boston that's been a contender now for the last 4 or 5 years, let's just say at least, there's no other acceptable option than winning a championship. And they won it 2 years ago. That's the bar. They don't feel like they have a championship team. They're not going to force it. They're not going to make a desperation signing. They're not going to do any of that crap. So what Boston did was they decided that instead of dealing with the harsh tax penalties of going second apron when it comes to the team's overall salary cap, they decided to not only ship off Jrue Holiday to Portland, but then they trade Kristaps Porzingis to the Atlanta Hawks in a three-way deal. And that saves Boston about $180 to $185 million. I've been seeing figures up to $200 million. People round up. It's about $185 million they save. It keeps them away from the second apron, and it allows them the flexibility to spend next season to build around Jason Tatum once again. We'll see what kind of moves, if they have anything else up their sleeves this year. But it's hard to think that without Jason Tatum, Boston, with the current roster composition, can actually win the Eastern Conference. It's just very hard to think about. And so Boston made the moves that they made. They're telling their fan base that this year, I mean, look, with the team that they have right now, they can still make the playoffs. But thinking that they're going to be in the NBA Finals, that is wishful thinking. So Boston decided to protect the franchise as a whole long term with what they thought. Now, the big question is with Boston, are they done? Can we see Jaylen Brown or Derrick White get dealt? I'm seeing the rumors regarding Jaylen Brown. We've been seeing these things pop up sporadically over the last few years. But could this be it for Jaylen Brown to see what the market has in store for him? I don't know if the Celtics are done just yet. Shams Charania seems to be teasing us a little bit because he's telling everybody in all the shows he's going on, last night telling SVP, telling all the other shows, stay tuned, stay tuned, stay tuned, which is great. It keeps us on our toes. But this shows me that at this point, two things with Boston. Number one, Tatum is not coming back next year. They're not going to try to force him back. Unless this team somehow goes on a run because of an Achilles injury, that takes up to a year, 10 months at this point. I mean, remember, he injured this in May? So you're looking at a max, I think, an earliest. I can't see him returning before the All-Star break, or let alone right after. You're looking at maybe, hypothetically speaking, a March return at best. Maybe he gets in the final week of the season, but at that point, do you risk it if they're a low seed? So they're viewing this season on their standards as a lost season. That's what this is. They're retooling for the future right here. So that is what Boston is doing with making those moves. And whether they made the moves or not, there's no Jason Tatum for 90%, at least 90% of next season. Other moves that were made, the Washington Wizards end up doing a very good job of getting rid of Jordan Poole. Because I don't know if a lot of you watched the Wizards last year, and the Wizards are not a contending team or anything, but they're fun. They're fun for fantasy. They're fun for DFS, and that's because of a few things. Number one, they play fast. Number two, they don't play great defense. So when we're seeing the Wizards on the slate, we're often looking at the opponents and them too if they're in a fast-paced matchup. And so they end up trading in the major pieces were CJ McCollum and Kelly Olynyk, for that matter, going to the Washington Wizards, and Jordan Poole going back to the Pelicans. Saddiq Bey, who missed all of last year with an injury, he goes back there. And what this does for the Wizards, this all leaves the Wizards with a bunch of expiring contracts to the point where after this upcoming season, Washington is going to have over $100 million of cap room to spend. And normally I would say, well, who cares? It's the Wizards. Who are they going to attract to come to DC? But now you're starting to see these young pieces and what they can become. Keyshawn George, Bob Carrington, who as soon as you saw Jordan Poole getting traded to the Pelicans, immediate reaction I saw on socials was everybody was all Bob Carrington, which I think is great. But Bob Carrington, when it comes to his shooting, needs a little bit more development in that area. Regardless, it is a great situation. And that's what Jordan Poole does. These Jordan Poole, Zach LaVine guys that are so ball dominant and they're not even helping their team over the hump, but really just screw out over all of their other teammates because they're not getting enough time with the ball. They're not getting the opportunity to create. Guys like that aren't good for team basketball. Ray Flowers asked me on Elite Sports Game Time, which you can check out on demand with the SiriusXM app. You see it right there, and I said it before. This week, 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern. Next week, which, hate to say it, but will actually be the show's final week for the season. And this is something that's been planned since the very beginning, so it's no surprise or anything. But we'll be back to 8 p.m. Eastern, Tuesday through Thursday. Monday will be at 7 p.m. Eastern, and I'll promote that on social a lot. I know that's a lot to keep up with, but hosting in the morning with Ray and Ray talking with me about these trades, pretty fresh off of them being announced later in the afternoon yesterday, the evening yesterday. Ray asked me about Jordan Poole. Ray's a Warriors fan. And he asked me, well, where does Jordan Poole fit? And to me, Jordan Poole fits coming off the bench. In a meaningful role, that's not him. Coming off the bench with a bunch of skilled scorers, consistent shooters in front of him, that's fine. He can win Sixth Man of the Year. But that's what I think of Jordan Poole right now. And the Pelicans don't have any idea what they're doing. They're stuck. They're anchored down by Zion Williamson. They have to make a decision on whether or not they're going to stay committed to Zion or if they're going to try to move on and completely rebuild. So this trade that was done, and a lot of people are like, well, trading for McCollum, now the defense gets even worse for Washington. It's not about that for Washington. It's about getting McCollum as an expiring contract. And McCollum, futuristic piece, number one guy, no. Number two guy, no. Number three guy, he could be. But we'll see what the asking price is for him. And I'm guessing it's not going to be anything that the Wizards are going to be even close on unless he makes a complete team impact helping improve those other players on the Wizards. Alex Sarr, he's looked pretty good. Nice little floor stretcher that I just wish would kind of mess around in the post a little bit more because he's got those post moves, but he also has that shooter's touch. So they've got exciting pieces. They're not a contending team, but they're building up. That's what they're doing right now. They are completely rebuilding. I remember when the Thunder completely sucked, and it took them years and years, but that's what they did. The Warriors, they weren't sniffing serious playoff runs, and then all of a sudden, they drafted Steph Curry, and then the next few years they built up, and before you know it, a dynasty was formed in the 2010s because of that. So when it comes to the Wizards, what they're doing is they're just giving themselves, kind of like what the Celtics are doing, giving themselves a lot of cap room next offseason. Few of you asked me about Anfernee Simons in Boston. Simons, to me, is just a scorer. Anything he does assist-wise, I view as a bonus because Derrick White is perfectly capable of bringing up the ball. I can't tell you right now who's going to be the featured shooter between those two, and especially when it comes to Jaylen Brown. Now, they trade Jaylen Brown for nothing and get barely anything back. Now it's open season. Now this season is going to be all Derrick White and Anfernee Simons, and all of a sudden I like him because now that not only gives Simons more shots, but less hands on the ball, and that's where Simons, I think, can help. Simons has the capability of running the point, but he's more of that shoot those early 2000 shoot first point guards, and that works out fine. But the player has to be consistent, and it doesn't necessarily make the team better. Just ask Stephon Marbury. Did Stephon Marbury actually make his team better? Not really. The only player that's like the outlier with this, and yes, there are ball-dominant guards in the league now, but guys that are just going one-on-one always, Allen Iverson is the outlier, and even he didn't win a title. Got to the championship, didn't win it, though. Team basketball, the Thunder, team basketball. The Celtics, team basketball. That's what we're seeing here. Even the Warriors, they had Curry, but they had other guys too. Draymond Green, he wasn't as seasoned and grizzled yet. Klay Thompson, Draymond Green obviously bringing up the ball allowed Steph Curry to play off the ball, which was gold for Golden State, pun intended. So a lot of moves being made right here. Jalen Green now with Devin Booker. That's not going to be a fun situation for either, especially if Booker's bringing up the ball and he's passing off to Jalen Green a lot with that streaky shooting. It could take down his assists just a little bit. So Jalen Green's still going to have a very similar role that he had in Houston few less scoring options, so he's going to be taking more shots, so that helps him a little bit too. But ultimately, the Celtics making the moves that they've made, the Rockets making the moves, the Rockets going all in, the Celtics starting to save money, the Wizards starting to save money. Teams are being smart about this. And there are teams that are willing to go into the second apron and pay the hell out of their ass when it comes to the salary cap and luxury tax and getting taxed like crazy. But Brad Stevens has done such a great job that it's very hard for me to doubt Brad Stevens. Jaylen Brown, like I said on the block, I also saw leading into tomorrow's draft. The draft itself has drama. Ace Bailey, with all of a sudden going from being a number 1, number 2 overall pick to now starting to move down a little bit, showing a little bit of attitude problems, not wanting to work out for certain teams. And that shows right there. It's weird. There's so many, 99.9% of people, they get any kind of offer. They get selected in the draft, and they're honored just to be drafted in the league. They're making a hell of a lot of money. And now with Bailey, first of all, they messed up his height. Thought he was 6'10". He goes to the combine and measures at 6'7.5". No sneakers, but is that really going to put on 3 inches just like that? I'm not so sure about that. So there was that, the bad representation as well that we're seeing. So now he's starting to shift down. He's saying what teams he doesn't want to be with. He doesn't want to be with Charlotte. He doesn't necessarily want to go second overall. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me that this guy is being that selfish and his draft stock is starting to plummet a bit. Will he be a top 10 pick? I think so. But man, with everything we've seen, it's bad. And he's missing out on workouts, doesn't want to work out for teams. Just don't get it with these guys. Just don't get it. I didn't get it with Danny Ferry back in the day. Did not get it at all with him. No idea why these players do that. Because at the end of the day, if you really want off the team after a couple of years, you show your worth, you get off the team. All of a sudden, extension talks start year 3, let's say. With your first-round pick, you're getting a 4-year deal. Extension talks start year 3. You don't want to be with the team anymore. Okay, you don't want to be with the team anymore. So now you can start to continue to work and do what you do, but then you could be shipped off, or you don't sign an extension, you enter unrestricted free agency with which a team's not going to want you to do because they don't get anything back in return. So as of right now, as we state, I'm not looking at the Cavs plus 850, the Knicks plus 850. I don't even have a coach just yet. The Thunder plus 225, but the Rockets being all the way to plus 750. And the reaction on the Kevin Durant news just shows right here that there is no second option at this point when thinking who's going to win the NBA championship. There's no clear-cut second option there. End of basketball here. I'll tell you this. I told you guys last week that basketball won't be taking up majority of the show anymore. But when we have these major trades going on, it does impact the futures market a bit. And that's, by the way, you'll get a little bit more on Fenster's Basketball Diaries. My episode will be coming out on Friday to give you draft reaction. Maybe we'll have another trade. So I'll be giving you a reaction piece, a reaction chapter on Friday instead of Thursday. So with that right there, as always, as I tend to do, especially during football season, let's talk to Rich Maletto, the fantasy Bosco here from fantasyguru.com. Rich, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Good. How are you? My dad wanted to know what the fantasy Bosco thing was when I talked to him after Friday's show. I thought that was kind of funny.
I love that very much when we say, don't follow Rich on. I got that from you, Rich. Don't follow Rich Maletto on Twitter at Fantasy Bosco.
Yeah, he was like, I don't understand. I was like, it's a long story, Dad. Don't worry about it.
Your dad's like, screw that Fensty kid. He's telling people not to follow my son. Are you serious here?
No, he's like, so did you tell him that? I said, I tell everybody that. I said, he goes, why is that? I said, because I don't talk as much football and racing on there as I used to. I'm like, if you want the content and the quality content, subscribe. Get on Fantasy Guru, hit us up in Discord. I'm in Discord all the time. I answer as many questions as I can. So if you want content, Twitter's not the place to follow me. Follow me on Discord.
So, Rich, let me ask you this, man, because there are just a lot of questions. Are there certain times, and I feel like we need to talk about this a little bit more in general with our analysts, are there certain times that you're in the Discord room, obviously beyond getting tagged, just kind of hanging out there specific times where some of the early birds out there that are getting ready for their drafts prior to August and even early September can reach you regularly?
That's a really good question. That's something I've talked with a couple of members about, because Armando's kind of doing that, right? He gives out a notice and says, hey, from this time I'll be in there. I used to hang out in there a lot, especially when I first got started. I didn't have as much content to help put out there and things like that. I have not been able to hang out in there like I used to. So the tagging is fine. I do think I'm going to start doing kind of what Armando has done and say, hey, I'm going to be in there from this time to this time. That's a good time to get a hold of me, and I'll be more than happy to answer all the questions that I can, because we have such a great membership. I overdid it by being in there so much, and got to the point where I was just burning the candle at all ends and felt like I couldn't get to everybody. So I think I am going to do that. I haven't picked a day yet where that works, especially with NASCAR. It's a little more difficult because I'm doing some NASCAR stuff, on Wednesdays and Thursdays. We're obviously in there on all the big days, but I'll probably have probably a Tuesday night window that I think I'm going to target, because I feel like that's early enough in the week to kind of help folks out. But as of now, I don't. But I would say Tuesday nights, 8-9 o'clock Eastern is probably a good time when I'll probably start being in there a little bit more regularly.
No, that's excellent, man, because it's a lot of questions come your way. It's hard to answer all the questions, but the big thing is, and Ray Flowers is very much into this too, and he talks about it. So a lot of the times everyone's questions are already getting answered.
Right.
So instead of doubling up on the questions, it makes everyone's life easier if they scroll up a little bit. Like
search.
Dude,
the search feature.
Right. And yes, the search feature, which is great. But also, even just to even get topics for the show, sometimes I'll just go into the season-long chat and just scroll up half a page. I have a million topics I'm seeing. Some of them have to be in common with each other. Some of them are regarding the same teams that we're seeing over and over again. And that's what the people are talking about, Rich. So while we talk about Discord, and Jeff mentions this on the Elite Sports Show on SiriusXM, we have the largest active Discord community in fantasy sports. I mean, there's a reason for that, and that being the nucleus, essentially, where I'm drawing a lot of the topics I'm talking about on shows from, because this is what's speaking to me right now. And I did a whole thing on the Dolphins. I even had Armando Marcel on, because outside of 8chan, who I drafted in our mock, I have no idea what the hell to do with the rest of this team, man. Have you thought about that?
No, but I do know, I love how you reached out to Armando, and I challenge folks on this because I know I disagree and butt heads with some of the other staff. I challenge anyone to know Browns football better than me, for example. There have been times when people are like, I just don't see it, and it comes to fruition. It's like, look, after watching this team for 40 years, you find patterns and tendencies even when there's different staff and everything else. So I'm all about leaning on the folks that are down into the dirty. I mean, before we all did this, we were all massive fans. We were fanatics, right? And where does our fandom stem from, right? So, as a kid growing up, it was Penn State football, Indiana, IU, Indiana University basketball. It was the Steelers. It was the Browns. It was the Indians. So when it comes to those teams, I feel like, hey, I might come from out of left field, it may seem like, unless you've been a fan of these teams for 40 years. And then it's like, so no, I'm with you. I'm kind of torn on the Dolphins myself, so I enjoyed the Armando Marcel show you did with him. I thought that was helpful. He's very in tune with what's going on. I mean, I reach out to Mike Dempsey about the Jacksonville Jaguars from time to time, right? Yeah. I mean, that man knows the Jags in and out, and if he's got a gut feeling on something, I tend to roll with it because it's not coming out of left field. He has a reason and, a method to the madness, if you will.
Did he tell you anything about the backfield at all?
Not yet, other than I got a picture of Tootin's jersey and a big smiley face. So my gut feeling is Dempsey's on the Tootin train, and everything else is just a matter of time, if you will.
Mike Dempsey, who you all hear on SiriusXM, longtime friend of both of ours, actually. I used to, just like with Jeff, I used to produce his show, and he also covers the Jacksonville Jaguars locally too in Jacksonville. So he has been for a very long time. Yeah, so it's always good. I was working with Dempsey when he was doing the Maurice Jones-Drew show.
Yep.
So we got to talk about that all the time right there. Imagine asking an actual NFL player, hey, do I start you or do I start Ashton Jeanty?
I remember phone calls coming in and people asking MJD that. Like, do I
Dude,
start
that was
you?
the bane of my existence, man. I used to screen them and be like, we used to have rules. You always draft MJD first. You never, ever start anyone over MJD. And I'd screen the calls, and I'd be like, you can't ask them this. But if you couch it this way, they'd totally not listen to direction. They were going, no, I'm not supposed to not take you, but you were Matt Forte, Maurice.
Oh, you know what Maurice is going to say? Come on, man. That's just a silly question.
I actually, and I'll have to send you the audio, I one time traded for him in one of my leagues back when I was producing the show. And I told Dempsey about the trade, and I traded for MJD. And Dempsey told me to bring it up on the show, which is hilarious. But I didn't know I was being set up because who I traded for MJD, I think it was Michael Bush and Javid Best. It wasn't the good Javid Best year, I'll tell you that much. I just combined them to trade for MJD. And Dempsey's like, yeah, bring it up to him on the show. So I did. And MJD responds, I do this whole setup with, that's all? That's all you gave up? Dempsey went bananas laughing. He was just laughing so hard right there. There's nothing more authentic than that. Hey, I traded for you in my fantasy league, and then being told you didn't trade enough, or the opponent didn't get enough for me. Crazy.
I could only imagine, and you know Dempsey knew that right off the bat and knew how MJD was going to respond. He set me
right up. It was radio.
He gave a softball toss out there and just waited for someone to bash it, man.
Oh man, I should have known because he was like chuckling as I was telling him.
So I love Mike, man.
So Browns football. You were saying nobody knows more about Browns football than you. At this point with Cleveland, there's so many questions. I mean, who are you trusting to even run the ball there? Is it going to be Judkins, who we're seeing go inside the top 75? Is Sampson going to cause it to be a even split? What's going on in Cleveland?
I feel like I've beaten this dead horse, and I don't know if people are just humoring me by yeah, whatever, or they just think I'm full of it. I go back to, as good as Judkins is, I don't think he's Nick Chubb. I think Nick Chubb in his prime was one of the best running backs in the NFL has seen. I feel like he wasn't used enough in the passing game, and we used to complain about it. Those of us that watched some sweet catches like the one he had in the back of the end zone a few years ago said, why are we not using him in the passing game? We know some coaches, unlike Sean McVay, really don't want to lean on one guy. They have this idea that there's a workload, there's a threshold they really need to stay below. I remember how many of us had Nick Chubb griping. Why is he not getting the ball more? Why is he capped at that 15 to 20 touch mark, not involved in the passing game, all of that? So my question to everybody is, why do we assume Judkins all of a sudden is going to be a bell cow when Nick Chubb, maybe one year you could argue was a bell cow, outside of that was not, with the same coaching staff? So if that's the case, why do we assume Judkins is going to be that? Then let's add to the mix. I always say actions speak louder than words. If that's how you feel about Judkins, Dylan Sampson's not the same cut of cloth. That's a different back. So you took one in the second round and you followed it up with another one in the fourth round in a deep RB class where good running backs were being taken in the third, fourth, and fifth round. So I go, actions are telling me you have a role that you want Sampson to develop into. Maybe his pass pro's not great right now, but maybe they see an outlet for him in the passing game more. Maybe they see it. I can't imagine use a fourth round pick on a kick returner where I feel like they're happy with Ford, for example. And I don't think they were happy with Ford in the volume games that he got. I feel like he disappointed, and we saw that. So I'm of the belief this is a 1-2 punch running system in Cleveland. This is going to be very similar to what we saw with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. So I don't know. I don't think Judkins is as good as Chubb, so I get the hype. But this offensive line back when we were high on Chubb was better. Right now it's kind of meh. It's mid, unless they make some improvements. They've got another young running back, and Ford isn't chopped liver either. So I'm not sold we see the volume that people are expecting from Judkins right now. I'm just not. I think it's going to be more like what we split.
Man. I'm having trouble getting there because, look, I've done this before. I brought this example up, Rich, 1,000 times. I don't know if you remember this. I want to say this was about 7 years ago at this point where I really tried to wait on running backs in this particular draft and in a few drafts actually. And it just so happened to be that for the Buccaneers, Peyton Barber and Ronald Jones were going right next to each other. And I was on the wheel at the end of the draft line there for the snake. And I just double tapped it. I went both of them like, okay, just got myself very late 10th round value running back unit. It's awesome. Saves so much value. And then it was a full-time job figuring out who between the two I could start in my flex every single week. And this situation that you just described here, and even before I brought this up to you, had very similar vibes. And I don't want to deal with that heartache again.
Well, if it's a great offensive line or a great running scheme like you've seen with Kyle Shanahan, you know, Devonta Foreman and Keelan Coleman, right? Or Tevin Coleman. I don't know where that name came from. Anyway, that was a headache, right? I mean, it got to the point where you were like, I'm just going to use both. I mean, that was, at least for me, that was the start of me being willing to use both running backs in my fantasy lineup from one team. Because the way I looked at it, one was going to be RB2 production. The other one was going to be flex production. I want to make sure I get that RB2 with that RB1 high side, right? Because they might have a multiple touchdown game, might have that 100 and some odd yard game, right? You didn't want to miss out because you didn't know which one it was going to be. I don't know if it's that way in Cleveland. I just think that these two backs complement each other. And I go back to the Hunt Chubb situation. I look at like what I'm thinking is going to happen in Denver, where we know we have seen Sean Payton do that in New Orleans with Ingram and Kamara as one example. And even before that, Reggie Bush and McAllister at one point, and I think Ingram for part of it. I mean, we're going back a ways, so I'm going off of memory here.
But McAllister, that was like my first ever fantasy running back I drafted back in like 2002.
God, now you make me feel old, man. I think my first running back I drafted was Tomlinson.
That's not too far off, though.
No, you're right, because that would have been.
It's the same
90s.
year, pretty much.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
There was like that area where you had like Priest Holmes, Steven Jackson,
Sean
Alexander, Larry Johnson. Like you had all those guys you were deciding on.
And they were great. We don't have those anymore. You know, back then it was you had a 50-50 shot at getting one of those guys. And if you somehow were like on the turn of the first round and people like were sleeping, you could have gotten two of those guys, right? And you were like just loving life because at that point, maybe one or two receivers you could really lean on. Otherwise, it was a whole smattering of, they're pretty decent, you know, and you could just load up on them in the rounds like 3 through 8. Those days are gone, bro. Damn. That was, seems like forever ago. But yes, to the point being, I just think it's more of a split workload. And the bigger question is, the quarterback. We talked about this on the live stream yesterday. I'm not sold on what it's going to be. You know, Tyler said he thinks that Gabriel might be cut. I disagree. I think if anyone gets cut, it's Kenny Pickett. From everything I've seen and heard, the team really loves Gabriel. And I go back to this. I love all the naysayers on Gabriel. I want them to continue to keep thumping their chests because all I see is Doug Flutie reincarnated.
Wow.
That's same height.
That's what
same
you
height.
Like Gabriel.
Same height. Left-handed thrower. Doesn't really rush, but is quite mobile to find the throwing lanes. Is very savvy and a smart player. And Doug Flutie flopped in the NFL until a coach was willing to go, you know what? He dominated the CFL. Maybe there's a way to make him work in the NFL. And at 30-some years old, he comes over to the NFL and starts putting up numbers that makes everybody cry. And I don't mean cry like I'm sad. I mean, you were sad if you played against Doug Flutie because nobody drafted him until late, and he just put a 30-burger up on against you in the fantasy lineup. So that's the way they talk about him. They love this and up, and I've always said we don't do that enough at quarterback. It's not like anyone complains about his ball throwing. It's not like anyone complains about his accuracy. The knocks are he's left-handed and he's short. Well, that was Doug Flutie's knocks too, and with the right coach, it worked. So I'm not sold on that. I also thought the stuff I liked about Sanders is now not – I mean, I thought he was being pretty savvy. I didn't care for the legend talk, everything legend or legendary every time he ended a conversation or whatever it is I heard. But two speeding – look, bro, it's Ohio. You They use laser, not radar. So your radar detector better have laser, and it's a short range. And
Oh,
they game
you're going
up.
101.
I know.
Rich, it's when you're going, like, for instance, in certain states that are next to each other, like North Carolina and Virginia, where all of a sudden going 80 and a 70 goes from being just a normal ticket to reckless driving, where you're losing half your points once you cross the state line. That's one thing. When you're going 101, you're just being a freaking dumbass.
Well, as someone who got a 95 and a 70 ticket in North Carolina, I can't knock the dumbass part because it's true. And
Reckless
you are right.
Driving, Rich.
I looked at the girlfriend at the time and said, just a heads up. If the officer wants, he can haul me to jail right now. It was 1:00 in the morning. We were coming out. I was in the middle of a move from Charlotte to Wilmington. She got off work and I was tired. I'd been up since 5 a.m. I was just trying to get us there. The cop was super nice. He's like, do you know why I pulled you over? I said, man, I didn't even realize I was going that fast. I said, I've been up since 5 a.m. We're moving to Wilmington. I'm just trying to get there because we got a bunch of appointments tomorrow. I said, I am really sorry. He goes, nope, looks like you got a clean record. You do need to appear in court, though. So either you or someone on your behalf has to be there. He goes, but honestly, as long as everything I'm seeing matches up, he goes, you should be able to get it taken care of that day, no problem. So I called the lawyer, and the lawyer's like, dude, you were over by Camp Lejeune. He goes, they were just happy you weren't drunk, you weren't high, and he goes, trust me, with the military there, he goes, they get people doing way faster than that trying to get back to roll call.
Wow.
He goes, this will get taken care of. It was a couple $100, no big deal, but I feel where you're coming from. My point being is that's two. Whether the 101 is egregious or not, that's two, bro.
Right.
Like you gotta, I'm telling you, the cops in that area don't play. My grandmother got a 1 mile an hour speeding ticket on 480 outside of Cleveland. I'm telling you, they don't play, bro. So I'm worried on that aspect of it. I don't think he gets cut. I don't think they get rid of Flacco. I would love to see Flacco get a chance, but I'm concerned, if we get the Flacco of 2 years ago, this offense will be fine, and all the Jerry Jeudy drafters are going to be loving life because they got him at a massive discount, and he's going to eat. If it's Pickett, if it's Sanders or Gabriel, I'm concerned. And Fensty, I'm not sold we won't see all four this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's no clear cut. I mean, this team, what direction are they going in right now? We don't know. Do they have the winning roster composition? No. So, yeah, this is going to be a very experimental year. And that brings me to this, because in our staff mock, David Njoku, I almost kind of took him where I did because he was the best of all the remaining evils, or I thought were evils out there. Also thinking that at least Flacco's going to be throwing him the ball a little bit there, thinking it's going to be Flacco for the majority of the season, throwing him the ball. I know he's had a little bit of health issues there. Last year he was a little bit banged up at certain times. But we're talking about 10th round value for this guy. Any appeal to you at this point?
100%. And he's always nicked up. So what we saw last year is what we've seen throughout his whole season. And I know Fannon's there and people are loving that, and I do too. But I want to, again, same staff, go back to when they took Njoku and Harrison Bryant. At one point, we thought we were playing roulette with tight ends in Cleveland, because if Harrison Bryant learns to catch the ball and not drop the ball and not fumble the ball, I'm not sold that we get the domination of Njoku we've seen over the last couple of years. They had no problem running two tight end sets and using them both. I'm not sold we don't see that again. If you look at the receiving core, I would argue that running two tight end sets is going to be a potential norm or a desirable thing to do. I know they brought in Deontay Johnson, but come on, the guy couldn't even stay on the Ravens when they were winning. So what does Deontay Johnson bring? I like a little bit of Cedric Tillman. I think he's a prototypical outside receiver, which they need. And they play Jeudy all over the place. So why not? Would you split out Fannin or Njoku or run two tight end sets, especially if you want to be run heavy at times? So I think there's some hope there. I'm cautiously optimistic. I fear the volume won't be the same, but it's tight end. What's the difference between tight end 5 and tight end 12, Finsty? Right. And Njoku's going to get you some of those big games. So even though you're going to struggle at times, I don't know that there's another tight end out there that you're going to take in the 10th round that doesn't have the ceiling that Njoku does.
That was kind of my thought process too, because I mean, looking at other guys shortly before they're flying off the board, and I just couldn't wait anymore. I was talking with Tyler Beaker about this. Like, he waited till in this draft, which, by the way, all of you could find at fantasyguru.com, our staff mock draft. We have the draft board and everything, and a little bit of write-ups as well that Rich helped put together featuring all of our analysts. And I said to Tyler, I was like, I'm not going in on Kyle Pitts. It's one thing waiting on tight end. I have no problem doing that. Waiting that long, that's just not going to be me. But Njoku and Deontay Johnson, by the way, he's not even a thought at this point. This guy's got to keep motivated to stay on the field. I was watching an interview with him from like a few days ago, day or two ago, where he was literally admitting that when he wasn't put into the game a decent amount, he would just lose his motivation. This is where he's at in his career. And he's on interesting teams too. He's on teams like Texas, Houston. He's on teams like Baltimore. I mean, like, you're talking about a guy who just, when he doesn't play, he pouts.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm almost positive his contract is zero guaranteed in Cleveland.
Right.
So, I don't mind them gambling on it because they need some help in that room. And he definitely he's insurance for Judy, in my opinion. Right. I mean, if you want to talk about the strength of both of them, they overlap, right? Tillman definitely is not really from the same mold they are. So it makes sense from that perspective. I tell you what, I don't know how secure Stefanski's job is. If he somehow finds a way to make this team not suck, I think it bodes well for his future in the NFL, period. Because I think everybody looks at this roster and sees a bunch of dysfunctional pieces. And it all started from the Watson debacle. I mean, they got pigeonholed in with that moronic contract and now they've gotten creative with it and found ways to do this or that. There is some interesting skill position players in Cleveland with Judy and Tillman and Njoku and Fannin and the running backs, right? And the defense is still good. Jim Schwartz is still getting that defense to play well. They still have good pieces on the defense. They even upgraded a couple of places. So it's not like the defense won't matter. That defense can keep them in tight games. So if Stefanski can somehow work some magic, to me, I will tell you at the end of the year, if Stefanski is a decent coach or not worthwhile in the NFL. That's how I feel about it.
He is Rich Maletto, the Fantasy Bosco. Don't follow him on Twitter at Fantasy Bosco. Rich, you just released your robust running back article. For those that are going to the good old FG, what can they expect to see when they read your piece?
Really, it's an outdated process that people still use and I think still has a place. In standard leagues, highly recommend a robust running back model. And all we're talking about there is building your core around your running backs. That doesn't necessarily mean that has to be the first running back off the board or you're taking a running back in the first round. But when you look at your roster, say by round 6 or 7, you realize you have a strong running back core to lean on, if not the strongest in your league. In order to do that, though, it's going to cost you. We know this in fantasy. You can't be great at every position. You can be great at a couple, but you're going to be chasing at a couple others. If you want some balance, you're probably not going to be great outside of maybe one place or two at best, right? You'll have good balance, but you're probably only good, not great at all these places. The robust running back idea is really, I call it an outdated model because we were just talking about Tomlinson and Larry Johnson, those guys. In those days, if you could get 2 of those guys when there was only 6 to 10 in the league, like at the league being the NFL, you had a leg up. It wasn't uncommon that you could hit on a rookie running back later or something and potentially have 3 cowbell, if you will, running backs in your lineups at your 2 running back spot in a flex. And for years, that was the best way to win a fantasy championship. I don't know that's the case anymore, but we still give the option of understanding all the ways to do your drafts. And if everybody's going wide receiver heavy, don't force a wide receiver because you feel like you need one.
Right.
Go ahead and load up on running back. If you're on the turn and it's gone receiver, tight end, receiver, no running backs are taken, by all means, go ahead and double tap. Get Gibbs and Jeanty. Get Jeanty and oh man, who else is going there? Derrick Henry.
Those guys. Yeah.
Right. And then you could come back in the 3rd round and maybe get Kyren Williams.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you don't have any receivers, but if you started off with Barkley, Henry, and Kyren Williams, my Lord, I mean, that is a robust running back model right there.
Yeah, also good strategy too. stopping position runs too, because then you can get people thinking the other way. Now all of a sudden people start drafting running backs after you stop the run and maybe start a new one. Then it leaves you a bigger wide receiver pool that you were fearful of not having. So
right, absolutely.
Rich, yeah, that's what it's about, man. It's about there's no one strategy to do this, and even old school strategies that some might feel are a little quote outdated, they can still work. And that's why you go to fantasyguru.com to make sure that you read up on all the articles now so you could be in full-on draft mode by August. Rich is also great with NASCAR and racing. He's got all that coverage at fantasyguru.com. I'm Justin Fensterman. I'll be back on Elite Sports Game Time tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern with Ray Flowers. Make sure you catch Ray Flowers and Jeff Manns on Elite Sports today, 3 p.m. Eastern. For Rich Maletto, I'm Justin Fensterman. This is Fantasy Sports Daily. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, same channel with Ray Flowers right here on the Elite Plus Network, part of Fantasy Guru.